let's talk about bump stocks. All right. So bump stocks were in the news recently because on Friday, Supreme Court had a majority ruling saying that the ban by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms should be lifted, that it was not following the law. The law in question is a law from early in the 20th century banning automatic machine guns in response to prohibition, and all of the organized crime and the bloodbath that occurred as a result of it. The ATF had banned bump stocks after initially deciding not to, and this was in reaction to the Las Vegas shooting, and President Trump specifically wanting to do something after this horrific event in which Stephen Paddock, whom not much is known about, opened fire from a hotel room in Las Vegas to a festival down below and killed more people than had ever been killed in history by a shooting. The man used 15 bump stocks. Okay, so, I have a lot to say about two-way. There's a lot of spins of omission about two-way in general and about bump stocks. The coverage recently was horrible. It just basically looks like, who are these right-wing judges, right? They're terrible, Oh, of course it's Justice Clarence Thomas, and of course it's Justice Samuel Alito, because, this doesn't make any sense. Now, let me just get into bump stocks a little bit. They're not even a mechanical device. They're like a spacer that utilizes, as far as I know, the recoil action on a semi-automatic gun to achieve a much more rapid firing than a human could achieve by going like this. It's more like it is just like a machine gun. I watched a video on it. So I can understand why the ATF banned it, but I can also understand why this ruling was issued. Now, the dissenters were Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Justice Elena Kagan. There was an interesting quote from Sotomayor. She basically was saying, well, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it is a duck. And in this case, she'd be right. However, Justice Alito, in his supporting opinion, said this really needs to be legislated by Congress. And I tend to agree, because I think that the federal agencies under the executive branch, managed by the president with his cabinet, have entirely too much power. They're unelected, and they make rules that affect everyone drastically, often, sometimes. So I can see where they're coming from and where Justice Alito is coming from with that. And then people might say, well, yeah, but this is really bad. People will die because of this. Well, let me just briefly tell you about the spin of omission with 2A. There is a universal background check system. It's called NICS, National Instant Background Check System. They have a whole building. The FBI runs it in a building in West Virginia. It's not really very well reported. Each state has different commitments to reporting each year on the records of their residents that would be disqualifying and would cause them to fail a background check, a national background check, right? So, I think a lot of people who want to do something about guns, we gotta do something after each tragedy, is that they often ask, how can an 18-year-old walk into a gun store and pass an instant background check and walk out without being stopped? We have to do something, right? Well, I actually believe that anybody under 21, it does represent a kind of a reporting loophole, because some of the shooters of late, they did have records. They had mental health issues. The high school guidance counselor had information. But I actually submit that this is a huge loophole around the country, and more of the reason why a teenager would pass an instant background check and yet still have a record. Now, mental health, a lot of states have a big problem with reporting on mental health because of HIPAA laws. I think we can solve this. I think there's a way to solve this. Maybe that should be legislated, right? Because the system's there. It's just not adequately funded or reported. And under Obama, the Washington Post reported, the funding was actually taken away from helping states to have the manpower and resources and time to put together their record reporting to the FBI. Now, Dianne Feinstein tried to ban bump stocks in 2013. They were mass-produced in 2010, but I think bump firing has been going on a long time, kind of like just you can make your own or whatever. And by the way, it does not fall under the law that says you can't alter a gun, because it's not altering any part of the gun. It's just adding to it, is what I'm gathering. The reporting has been atrocious. I recall hearing that, oh, well, disabled people like to buy bump stocks, because it helps them to be able to fire, because you lean on, you use the bump stock to pull back on the front of the rifle as you're pulling the trigger, and it uses the recoil. So I just looked into it because I didn't see any mention of the disabled. Who is the minority whose rights are being taken away, And so turns out, statistically, it doesn't really seem like allowing bump stocks has actually been for the reason of helping the disabled, law-abiding gun owners. There was an article in mic.com, mic.com. I'll link to it. It's a paywall, but you just have to watch an ad, okay? It was written 3 days after the Las Vegas shooting, the massacre, and it was saying, it looks like bump stocks were not created for disabled people, just in how you look at the effect of it. Gun shop owners interviewed saying, well, I see some disabled people buying them, but not really, definitely not the majority. This Supreme Court decision is the sort of thing that can really be elucidated by complete facts. That's why I'm telling you about the spin of omission regarding the Second Amendment, or what I've been saying is 2A. And before I forget, if you like the content here and you feel it's refreshing or original, please don't forget to hit that like button, comment, share, and subscribe. Subscribe, follow. Yeah, so we can have more discussions like these. Back to complete facts. The spin of omission about the universal background check is a big deal. The fact that it's the funding, the fact that it's HIPAA laws, and then just the idea that our law enforcement system or network around the country is ailing, and it's on life support, really. It suffered so much. Our system suffered so much after the summer of love, after the summer of 2020, because there was a call for defunding the police. I cannot even imagine a world in which we are such knee-jerk, reactionary people that we have to defund something before we actually just figure out how to make the system more effective and fair. But what I'm saying is, until we get better enforcement and making sure that the criminals who have records should not get guns, or if they do get a hold of them, the policing can make sure that they are caught in the act of whatever crime they're committing, and then the gun will also be taken off the streets. But that's not happening. And the media is not helping, because every time there's a gun accident, a child finds the gun and shoots their parent, or maybe the parent accidentally shoots a child, or I remember this one, there was a girl in Las Vegas actually at a shooting range who killed the teacher. It's awful, right? And it's so rare that it makes national news. But this is important, because even my general impression until a few years ago was that, oh my God, we got to do something about this. It's happening again. The mass shooting is happening again. When are we going to get smart? Well, I'm still asking that, but in a more informed way. When are we going to get smart about enforcing our laws, ensuring that law-abiding citizens procure defense for themselves and their families, or however many people they want, unlimited, because they are law-abiding? And when are we going to hold criminals accountable, as well as the corruption that allows these criminals to go on and on? You have to start from a baseline of effective law enforcement. And when I say effective, I mean you shouldn't have a problem with a chokehold and all of a sudden somebody says they can't breathe over and over and over and over. You should have training where that doesn't happen anymore. That's part of effective law enforcement. I'm not talking about, I don't want a state police or militarized law. No. Let's just make things more effective. Back to the Las Vegas massacre. I think, for example, investigating, and doing a good job at finding what the motive of this guy was is a better way to start preventing these tragedies than banning bump stocks, right? But there's still been no motive established. The Las Vegas Police Department, look into that investigation. It's just, I'm sorry to say, it's a travesty. I'm sorry for all the good people who are serving the people of Las Vegas as law enforcement. Here's another thing. I got to know some gun owners, law abiding, and they don't want any limits on their ability to purchase ammunition. Any quantity they should be able to purchase with no questions asked. And that is because the government should not be telling you what you need to defend yourself, because they don't know. And it violates the Second Amendment. Here's the thing. People who live in safe neighborhoods do not understand this. People who live in unsafe neighborhoods because either, they grew up there or they can't afford to live there, they have the right, still, thank God, to get a hold of whatever they can afford to defend themselves when there's lawlessness, which there clearly is. It's disproportionate to the percentage of the population that are Black Americans, and it shouldn't be that way. And it's because of racist people like Joe Biden who pander to them, and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and who just keep the system going, never get smart. So, in a way, I don't know if legislation would pass to ban bump stocks. I feel like the ban on automatic machine guns has worked. It might be because of the way it's worded. I mean, they don't make them anymore in this country, and I'm not sure where they might make them. Maybe Israel. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But what I'm saying is that did work. We don't have a bunch of machine guns on the streets. They're all semi-automatic. But a lot of them are probably using, some kind of bootleg bump stock. Because they're not following the law. Just like Stephen Paddock. Yeah, he used the bump stocks, but he wasn't. But he was breaking the law with every single thing that he did. And remember, how did he get all of that equipment in there? Just weird with the cameras. But all I'm saying is that the bump stocks might be different than machine guns because they're so easy to make. And so, really, this is a matter of us getting smart with our policing. We have more technology and more ability to get really good at law enforcement while minimizing harm than we have ever had. And yet, we're not doing it. So that's where we protect the public. So I'm not sure what will happen, but I do think there's an attack on the strict constitutionalist judges on the Supreme Court. Justice Clarence Thomas has been under fire for a long time now. They're trying to disqualify him. And Justice Samuel Alito also is now under fire. I think they're trying to get them to be recused from anything involving President Trump. And it's very obvious. But you know what? Recusal is mandated by almost every court in the land when there is an appearance of impropriety. Doesn't even have to be that they hang out with the person. It just has to be an appearance that they have a conflict of interest. Somebody was saying, Alito should definitely recuse himself because his wife flew the, a prayer to heaven flag that was used by George Washington. There's more to it than that, but it's like, she's a sympathizer. But they didn't care when Judge Juan Merchan in Manhattan did not recuse himself, even though he made, yes, a small donation to Democratic causes, but one of his deputies made a much larger donation, I found out. And so there was no concern about that appearance of impropriety. And Fani Willis, same thing. She had major conflicts of interest, but nobody recommended. Even now, she's still, I guess, on the case, even though it's stalled. So the thing is, recusal cannot be urged simply because you don't agree with the person politically that you want to recuse. And remember, the FISA scandal, too. FISA-gate, whatever you want to call it, Crossfire Hurricane. Peter Strzok, when he or I'm not sure exactly, submitted the application to spy on Carter Page and therefore President Trump, including before and after the election and in the White House. Yes, there's absolute 100% proof of that. The judge was somebody he palled around with, that the people in the FBI palled around with. So you want Samuel Alito to recuse himself, but you think, even though it's out in the news that there was a massive conflict of interest with this FISA application, which you won't even acknowledge, like the media and the industrial complex won't even acknowledge that the application happened, let alone that there was a conflict of interest. Yeah, no, that's very transparent. We need to all sit up and take notice. So don't let this reporting, which is very inadequate, on the Bump Stock case influence your opinion about the Supreme Court, because there are calls to be like changing it and having more disciplinary action. And that is not a good thing. They're supposed to be very independent of the other branches, even though presidents do appoint them, if we desire. So that's it about bump stocks, and I would love to hear your comments. All you people, all you American citizens, law-abiding gun owners who have an opinion on this subject. And if you have personal experience with bump stocks, please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for listening, and above all, keep calm and share complete facts, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.